Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we are diving headfirst into the ultimate biological thought experiment. We are asking the big question: what would actually happen to your brain and body if you just completely stopped sleeping? I mean, we've all been there, right? Wishing for a few extra hours in the day to get things done. But today we're going to unpack the beautifully complex, absolutely non-negotiable biology that makes skipping sleep literally impossible.
Seriously, I want you to imagine just completely pulling the plug on your sleep. No naps, no dozing on the couch, just 100% continuous, unbroken wakefulness. What exactly happens when we interrupt the body's nightly maintenance sequence? Well, to really understand the catastrophic effects of endless wakefulness, we first kind of have to solve the profound biological mystery of sleep itself.
Okay, let's dive into this. There's this incredibly famous quote from the pioneer sleep researcher Alan Rechtschaffen, and it perfectly frames the massive evolutionary paradox of sleep. Think about it for a second. When an animal sleeps, it is incredibly vulnerable. It can't protect itself, it can't forage for food, it can't procreate. From a pure, basic survival standpoint, spending a third of your life paralyzed and unconscious seems like a terrible idea. And yet, virtually every complex life form on Earth sleeps. Evolution mandated it. So what does that mean? It means sleep absolutely must be doing something vital.
For the longest time, historically, science viewed sleep as just this passive state. Period of neurological rest where the brain simply shuts off to recover, kind of like powering down your laptop. But modern science, it has completely flipped that idea on its head. Actually, scratch that. Sleep is the exact opposite of passive downtime. It is an intensely coordinated, highly active, and massively energy-demanding state. It's this multi-system maintenance window that you simply cannot survive without.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. Have you heard of the glymphatic system? It's basically your brain's nightly cleaning crew. During the day, your highly active brain produces a ton of metabolic waste, including this toxic protein called amyloid beta, which, by the way, is famously linked to Alzheimer's. But when you go to sleep, something truly amazing happens. The spaces between your brain cells actually expand, and cerebral spinal fluid rushes in, physically flushing these neurotoxins out. Without sleep, this mechanical clearance window just slams shut, and all those toxins, they just build up.
But it's not just physical cleaning going on up there. Your brain is also doing some heavy-duty computational housekeeping. Enter the synaptic homeostasis hypothesis, or SHY for short. As you learn things throughout the day, the connections between your neurons, your synapses, they get stronger. But if they just kept growing and growing forever, your brain would literally run out of physical space and energy. It'd be like your computer's hard drive catastrophically filling up and crashing. Sleep solves this by globally downscaling or weakening these synapses. It clears out the static and preps your neural hard drive for the very next day.
At the exact same time, your brain is actively managing your memories through something called hippocampal replay. During the day, all your fragile new experiences are rapidly stored in the hippocampus, but they can't stay there long term. During slow-wave sleep, that really deep, restorative stage of sleep, a specific chemical called acetylcholine drops. This low cholinergic tone creates a perfectly secure, low-interference window. Your hippocampus literally replays the day's events, downloading them into the broader neocortex for permanent, stable storage. Without this deep sleep, those fragile memories are just overwritten and lost forever.
And hey, it is not just the brain getting all the benefits. Your immune system heavily relies on this nightly downtime too. Sleep acts as a massive systemic tune-up for your bodily defenses. It regulates cytokines to fight off inflammation and enhances T helper cells to make your adaptive immune response hyper-efficient. In fact, studies show that getting a good night's sleep right after a vaccine significantly increases your antibody response. Sleep is, quite literally, your biological armor.
Let's move to and see how this builds. What happens when we actually start to strip that biological armor away? We are going to run a deprivation stress test. We'll trace the physiological collapse starting from the first 24 hours, push into the 48-hour mark, and finally look at the totally devastating long-term consequences of total sleep deprivation.
Right at the 24-hour mark, you hit what feels like a massive chemical wall. This is a head-on clash of two giant biological systems. First, a chemical called adenosine has been building up in your brain for literally every single minute you've been awake, creating this intense physical pressure to sleep. Second, your internal circadian clock detects that it's getting dark, prompting your pineal gland to dump a huge wave of melatonin into your system. Your body is just screaming for maintenance, and your cognitive focus begins to severely fracture.
Push through to 48 hours, and your exhausted brain essentially goes rogue. It starts forcing you to sleep, whether you want to or not. These are called microsleeps. They are brief, totally involuntary,
dissociative states where parts of your brain just momentarily switch off. You might hallucinate, you might lose track of time. But here is the absolute worst part about microsleeps. They completely fail to provide any of the deep, cellular repair and memory consolidation of true slow-wave sleep. It is all the cognitive interference with absolutely zero biological payoff.
But the really crucial point is what happens in the long term. We know from historical experiments, like the famous sleep deprivation rat studies done by Alan Rechtschaffen back in the 1980s at the University of Chicago, that the results are utterly devastating. Without sleep, the body undergoes a total systemic breakdown. It literally loses the ability to regulate its own temperature, the immune system completely collapses, shifting to a type 2 function while white blood cells plummet. You get this lethal buildup of reactive oxygen species directly in the gut, which eventually leads to fatal sepsis. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you feel tired, it actively tears apart your physiology from the inside out.
Which brings us to a fascinating, almost science fiction level thought experiment. If sleep is so dangerous because it leaves us physically vulnerable, and it's so incredibly demanding on our bodies when we lack it, could humans ever naturally evolve to just bypass it altogether? What would a truly sleepless human actually look like under the hood?
Now, what's really interesting about this whole concept is the sheer scale of the engineering problem. To evolve a sleepless human, our biology would have to radically restructure itself to do night shift work in the middle of the day. We would need real-time synaptic downscaling, which is basically defragmenting our brain's hard drive while we are actively trying to use it. We need continuous glymphatic clearance, meaning we'd have to physically flush out amyloid beta toxins while we are entirely conscious. And we need these hyper-efficient, real-time antioxidant systems in our gut to stop that fatal oxidative stress. Our current cellular machinery simply is not built to build things up and break things down at the exact same time.
So we arrive at our final thought for today. The biology of sleep isn't some evolutionary mistake. It's an absolute masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. It's the very foundation of your memory, your immune resilience, and the physical cleanliness of your brain. Think about this. If a magic pill existed tomorrow that safely eliminated your need for sleep forever, knowing that it is so intimately tied to your ability to learn, to heal, and to maintain consciousness itself, would you really want to give up the very process that keeps you fundamentally human? Definitely something to think about tonight when your head hits the pillow. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.